Less than a mile from the center of town, a famous old stadium crumbling down, no one's invested so much as a penny. Bring on the Deadpool and Rob McElhenney. The lyrics to Always Sunny in Wrexham by the Declan Swans, made popular by the Welcome to Wrexham documentary series, which I have been watching and perhaps you have been too. And quite apart from how interesting and engaging that show is, it brings to mind the topic, kids, of miracles. And we'll talk about it on the other side. Hello, you're listening to the John Huff Podcast. Oh, yay. Have you been watching the Welcome to Wrexham docuseries? This is a program that follows the recent fortunes of Wrexham Football Club. It's a football club in the town of Wrexham, Wales, okay? And this is one of those medieval salt-of-the-earth towns that you get in Britain, the UK, other parts of Europe that are just ancient, right? This town of Wrexham in Wales, about 45,000 people, founded like 1,000 years ago, was a center of industry, a center of trade back in the day. Industrial Revolution became one of these mining towns. One of these places where manufacturing happened, mining happened, a gritty, rough town full of gritty, rough people making their 9p down at mill, you know what I mean? One of those places. And then throughout the course of the 20th century, when the industrial side of things kind of dried up, as it did in towns from Wrexham, Wales, right through to Allentown, Pennsylvania, when the mining dried up, when the manufacturing dried up, when the towns fell upon hard times, and the modern history shows a difficult life in those places, man. Wrexham is one of those towns. And like so many of those towns, especially in Europe, these smaller cities, so much of the culture, so much of the community, so much of the rise and fall in those places centers around the local football team in a way that I think a lot of us North Americans don't really understand. For us over here, the professional team, let's say the Toronto Maple Leafs or the New York, as much as you can call the Toronto Maple Leafs a professional team. I was about to say Les Canadiens de Montréal, Les Glorieux, but in certain senses, it does rise and fall in Montreal with the Habs, right? And as a Habs fan, I get that. But in other parts of North America, you've got 8 million teams you might cheer for. You don't even cheer for the team in your city in a lot of cases, right? And the local pro sports team, or teams, depending on your city, are just one of a plethora of entertainment options, and half the city, maybe even more than half the city, doesn't even give a crap, right? I don't care about the NFL, whatever. But in places like Wrexham, 40, 50,000 people, with a team that is the third oldest team in world football, playing in the ancient Racecourse Stadium, the third oldest international stadium in world football, this ancient kind of community tie and tradition to this football club, where the whole community, the whole city basically rises and falls with the fortunes of the team. And the team also reflects the rises and falls of the community, right? And so Wrexham has this storied history of success and just this worship in the city. And as the city falls on hard times, so too does the team fall on hard times, right? For a very long time, Wrexham is playing, in one of the higher divisions of the English football system, right? We'll talk about that in a minute. And then what happens is in the early 2000s, economic hard times fall upon the city, economic hard times fall upon the team. And the team begins to drop leagues because they don't have the money anymore for the players to support the team. And eventually, financial problems lead to relegation for the team. It goes into administration in 2004, is eventually relegated out of the English Football League in 2008. And that, kids, is a disaster. Now, here's a little crash course for all of you who are not followers of European football, okay? Soccer. What happens in leagues over there is you don't get a guaranteed spot, all right, in your league. And there are tiers of professional leagues in pretty much every country. And teams at the end of each year are relegated from those leagues and promoted into those leagues, depending on their positioning in the standings. So if you are in most leagues, if you are one of the bottom 3 teams in the final standings, you are kicked out of that league and dropped to the division below you. Similarly, if you're one of the top 3 teams in the division below, you get promoted to the division above. And you want that, all right? You want that because the division above tends to mean you're playing better opposition, you're playing in bigger stadiums, there's more television money, it's a money thing and a prestige thing. You always want to be playing at the highest level to which you are capable, right? And so getting promoted is a great goal for every team in almost every league, unless you're in the very top level. Getting relegated is an absolute freaking disaster. And if you want to see this disaster in action, there's a docuseries called Sunderland Till I Die. All right. Sunderland is a big club in England and for many happy years played in the highest division. And then things went haywire and Sunderland got dropped down like 3 or 4 divisions. And there's a documentary series, Sunderland Till I Die. Similar situation. One of these towns bigger than Wrexham, where the football team is so much the heart of the community, and its fortunes are the fortunes of the community. And you watch and you see unfold the devastation of being relegated down through the leagues and losing the money and the revenue that comes with that and the prestige that comes with that. But it's a practical thing too, right? You get dropped out of the Premier League, which is the highest league, the highest division in England, currently led, by the way, by Arsenal Football Club. The loss of revenue from being dropped down means that people who work for your club get laid off, right? Players who have the ability to be playing at the higher level tend to leave your club if they can. It becomes this financially devastating thing that happens, right? Wrexham goes into administration in 2004, gets dropped from the Football League in 2008. All right, now, the English football system is a bewildering maze of divisions and regions once you get past a certain point. Okay, now there is an entity called the Football League, and it comprises the top 4 divisions of the pyramid. That is the Premier League at the top, currently led by Arsenal Football Club. Beneath that, the Championship Division. Beneath that, League One. Beneath that, League Two. Okay. And those 4 leagues together comprise what they call the Football League. And you want to be in it, okay? That's something like the top 92 or so clubs in English football, right? You want to be in that because of your status as a pro team, being in the Football League. The revenue is higher there, right? The potential is higher there, and you want to be in it. But if you're not in that league, if you're not in one of those 4 divisions, beneath that becomes this bewildering spider web of layers that goes like 10 more deep, all the way down to like semi-professional and amateur pub teams. And that's a rough place to be, especially if you are a Wrexham with this storied history, with this storied stadium, with this legacy of success in the past. And you've always been one of the Football League teams. That's Wrexham. That's the status you have. That's the financial situation you enjoy. To get dropped out of the Football League into this wilderness that is the lower divisions, the National League, devastating. Devastating from a financial standpoint, devastating from a prestige standpoint, devastating for the town that is so wrapped up in its identity with the Wrexham Football Club. Absolutely devastating. A team of that stature, a team of that history, a team of that potential should not be competing in the lower leagues. And yet financial hard times fall upon the team. And in 2008, they are dropped out of the Football League. All right. Absolutely freaking devastating. And for the following 12 years or so, they are adrift in this lower league system, lesser quality players, lesser quality football, less money. And once you kind of get in this cycle of not having money to get better players and not seeing really any opportunity to get back out of this wasteland and into the Football League, it just has this devastating effect on the fans. It has a devastating effect on the team. It has a devastating effect in this circumstance on the community. And the racecourse ground, this sort of hallowed, ancient facility that they've been playing in since the 1800s, begins to fall into disrepair. And what you see is the physical manifestation of relegation on a football club. And for 12 seasons, they live in this wasteland, and they have shots at getting promoted again. When you're in the lower league system, most of the leagues have a playoff system, all right? Depending on the league you're in, one or two teams will be automatically promoted to the next level. And then that third spot, you've got to do like a 16 playoff for to get that spot. Really, really high intensity, really, really high stakes stuff. Lower league, it's even harder. One team gets promoted, and then other teams have got to fight for that second promotion spot. And it happened that Wrexham made those playoff rounds several times, but never quite clinched it and got back out of the league. And then you have this hope. And as they say, kids, it's the hope that kills you. Get this chance, blow it, back into the league for another season, back into the league for another season. Really, really devastating stuff. And for a town that's struggling with hard times, economically, financially, a lot of the people, and it's one of these industrial towns that the industry left, and it's really, really difficult. And you think to yourself, dude, why are you telling me all of this? Because the Declan Swans bring on the Deadpool and Rob McElhenney. In the year 2020, Deadpool himself, Ryan Reynolds, teamed up with Rob McElhenney, actor, Always Sunny in Philadelphia, and together they purchased Wrexham. All right, they bought the football team. Seismic shockwave through the football world. All right, this is a non-league team. Normally would not get a dot of press outside of the local newspaper. All of a sudden, Wrexham is international freaking news because these two Hollywood stars have purchased the team. Who saw that coming? Nobody. Ryan Reynolds doesn't know a damn thing about running a football club, let alone one in Wales, halfway around the freaking world. And yet, these two cats bought the club. And many a skeptical eyebrow was raised because Wrexham, it was raised in the city, it was raised outside the city because Wrexham had seen this game before. Owners had come and gone, big promises, big potential, left them high and dry. They are somewhat jaded to this notion of a savior coming in. And then outside the world, people are like, what is this? Is this just a TikTok thing? Is this just marketing for Ryan Reynolds' tequila brand or whatever it is, vodka, whatever it is? His gin brand. Is it just that? Is it just these two kind of Hollywood playboy types with all their money having a freaking lark? Or are these guys serious about it and are they in it for the long haul? Another false dawn rising in Wrexham, and then when things get rough, These two cats are just going to split. And here we'll be again, still adrift out here in the non-league world, with our stadium crumbling down, as the lyrics say. No one's invested so much as a penny. Bring on the Deadpool and Rob McElhenney. And what have they done? A, they've put Wrexham on the map, the city and the club, in a way that nobody ever freaking saw coming, all right? Suddenly, people all over Hollywood are wearing Wrexham jerseys. They made this documentary series. They've just released 2 seasons of it, which is the story of the town, the story of the club, and the story of Ryan Reynolds and Rob McElhenney coming into this place, this guarded, jaded place, with these fans who live and die, these fans who laugh and weep with their football team. Like, I don't think these guys understood what this team means to the community, what they were really getting into. And it's this really fascinating docuseries watching these guys who are so not people from Wrexham coming into this community, trying to be accepted by this community, trying to take this club and turn its fortunes around and convince everybody that they mean it. That they're not just going to cut and run like everybody else did, Really, really fascinating stuff. And I love it so much. Because I play, A, I'm a football fan, okay. B, I play Football Manager Mobile on my handheld device. Now, if you don't know Football Manager, it is an absurdly detailed soccer football management simulation game, all right? If you download Football Manager on your computer, it is absolutely bewildering in the level of detail that you can put into building, managing your own football team out there in Europe or North America or wherever. And I had that game 10 or 12 years ago. I had the current iteration of that game, and it was way, way, way too much for me. I like the planning stuff. I like all of the off-the-pitch stuff. Way too much. It was a full-time job trying to even understand this game, the level of depth in it. But they created a scaled-down version of that called Football Manager Mobile, all right? So you do some of the off-field stuff, sign players, move players, set up your formations, whatever, player management, club management, but very, very low level, right? Meant to be very surface. I'm pretty surface. That's the level for me, okay? And I play Football Manager Mobile. And one of my favorite things to do on Football Manager Mobile is to take one of these clubs that has in real life fallen on hard times, slid all the way down the pyramid, and build it back up to the top again. And I did that, by the way, with Sunderland. Took them from League 2 all the way to Champions League winners. Thank you very much. And so I love this concept of taking a club in a community that has been devastated and restoring its glory, restoring its honor. And so watching Ryan Reynolds and Rob McElhenney actually do this in real life, fascinating for me to watch, and fascinating to just watch the behind-the-scenes operation of a pro football club, even a non-league club. And that was the fascination with Sunderland Till I Die as well. A, there was the story side of it, but B, there was just the behind the scenes. And I don't like Sunderland. I'm an Arsenal fan. But watching this happen at a big club and watching how it worked was great. And I really, really enjoyed that. And I really, really enjoyed the Wrexham thing. And watching Ryan Reynolds and Rob McElhenney do in real life what I do in my imagination on Football Manager Mobile. I also have an imaginary gin company, by the way. It's really, really fascinating to watch this happen. And they produced this docuseries really, really well. They make a story out of the story, and they make a story out of the town, and they make a story out of the supporters, and they make a story out of the players. The way they build the drama, the way that they just sort of capture the real magic and the real mystery and the real deeply felt emotional attachments. It's really dramatic stuff. It's really fascinating. And Rob McElhenney and Ryan Reynolds are professional actors. They're fun to watch. And they're interesting cats, and you want to root for them. And so the team comes along, and they begin to sink their own money into this project, which is what a football team needs to happen, by the way, at least within the confines of the economic regulations. And so they buy back the racecourse ground from whoever was owning it. They buy back the soccer stadium, and now the team owns it. And then they set to work refurbishing it, bringing it back up to standard. They begin to replace the old Cop stand, which is this magnificent, the Cop stand is such a feature of the club and its history, and it's fallen into complete disuse. We're going to set about rebuilding that. We're rebuilding this team, and the team gets better, and you can see the community rallying around it. And then Rob McElhenney and Ryan Reynolds are showing up at the games, and everybody's loving it. And then all the fans of other clubs are turning up their nose at it and calling it just a big Hollywood spectacle, which to a certain extent it is. But the money and the interest and all of this begin to flow into Wrexham. And all of a sudden, this team that's been adrift for years in the non-league, in that first season, they reach the playoff round, right? They've got a shot at finally, after all this time, getting back into the football league. And I don't want to tell you what happens. I don't want to spoil it. Maybe you haven't watched it and you're going to. There's just this amazing project happening. And there's a lot on the line for Reynolds and McElhenney, okay? There's a certain point in the first season where they're like, how much have we got sunk into this? Like X million of their own money they've got sunk into this. Whereby, if you don't get promoted, getting up back into the football league means way more revenue coming into your club from TV deals, from gate, from whatever. It's vitally important that we make back our investment by getting promoted. That's what the game is all about, right? And it's tense times, and they put in all of their own money, so much of their own money, hiring the right people. They got to make a manager change. They got to get the right players. And there's a huge financial stake in this for them, a huge risk. And watching this unfold is fascinating. And then the second season comes, and they just sort of continue this project, and you can see how it's evolving. It's really, really fascinating television, even if you're not into the football, because it's not so much about the football. It's about the personalities. It's about the community. It's about the history. It's about what's possible to happen if people are pulling in the same direction. And this is the crux of the episode, kids, if the miracle comes. If the miracle comes. I was talking in the past week with our old friend Kay Howell. Kay Howell, past guest on this program, keyboardist, singer, songwriter extraordinaire, my very, very dear friend. And we were going back and forth about life stuff, existential stuff, as we do. And Kay was saying to me how somebody said to her, or she was within earshot recently, somebody said, don't give up before the miracle happens. Don't give up before the miracle comes. And that's a piece of advice that's floating around in my head these days. And it ties to this Wrexham story because it's the evidence that miracles do happen, man. For years, the fans of the Wrexham Football Club, adrift in non-league where they don't belong, looking back at past glories, watching their stadium crumble to the freaking ground. It's like, we're never going to get out of this. It's over. Our beloved team, our beloved city, it's all over. And then what happens? One day, freaking Ryan Reynolds and Rob McElhenney turn up at your ground and say, guess what? We just bought your club. We're going to sink millions of dollars into it, and we're going to resurrect this thing. The miracle happens. You see it in sports all the time, man. Not always to the good, by the way, but you see it all the time in sports where this team is adrift and lost. And then they draft some quarterback / baseball player called Tom Brady. And without even knowing it, the miracle comes. And this applies to so many freaking things in life. You know, how many times have you heard about an overnight success, an overnight sensation in any field of the arts that was 10 years in the freaking making. You know what I mean? Like, I think about even my own beloved King's X, who grounded out in the clubs for years before they ever got a freaking record deal, you know? And the temptation to give up. They're all living in one house with a bunch of people sleeping on the freaking floor. They're broke. Some of them are married already. It's like, this is never going to happen for us, man. I'm giving up. I'm quitting. And they quit before the miracle can happen. I've told these stories more than once on the program. I think of the Greg Bissonette story. You know, drummer extraordinaire, played with David Lee Roth, played with everybody, plays with Ringo Starr now. One of the great drummers on planet Earth, who is also the voice of Winnie the Pooh in certain Winnie the Pooh products because he's got a weird voice. And one day he's at the studio and he's recording something, and in walks, I think, somebody from Disney, a producer, somebody important at Disney, and they're looking for a Winnie the Pooh voice. And on the talkback from the drum room, they hear Greg Bissonette's voice. And the producer guy's like, who is that talking? Well, that's Greg Bissonette. Get him in here. I want to talk to him. And then Greg Bissonette becomes the voice of Winnie the Pooh. And this whole thing opens up for him in voice work, you know? He wasn't even looking for that, and the miracle happened. And those of us who live in the creative world, those of us who are musicians, podcasters, painters, writers, whatever it is that you do in the creative world where it seems so much like the odds are stacked against you, man. It seems so much like all they ever say to you is, this will never work out, man. Nobody actually makes it. You know, it's almost impossible to make it. And you quit before the miracle can happen. And so I'm telling you all this Wrexham stuff just to drive home that point that you never quite know what is around the bend. You never quite know when that proverbial ship may come in. And so it's an encouragement to all of you. It's an encouragement to me. And it does not have to be just the creatives of the world. It doesn't just have to be the musicians of the world. Those of you who are languishing in jobs that you freaking hate and you can't seem to find your way out of, and you just want to quit. You want to quit your job, and that's reasonable. You want to quit life. You just want to give up on this prospect of things getting better. Yes, in some ways you have to make your own luck. Yes, you have to do the work. Yes, you have to apply the effort. But try to do so with the notion that it's going to work out, that a miracle is possible. Because I've seen those miracles in my own freaking life in ways that you might consider mundane. Now, back in the mid-90s, I was finishing my undergrad. My intention was to go to teacher's college and become an English/history teacher, which to a certain extent I am on this podcast. And in those days, getting into teacher's college was really, really, really tough. It was very, very demanding at that point in time. And so I am not too humble to tell you, was a Dean's List student in university, okay? Because I knew I had to be. It wasn't just, I get the paper and I'm free, as Emily Salier sang with Indigo Girls. For me, it was like, I need the paper and I need mucho marks, Jack, in order to get into one of these teachers' colleges. And I had done volunteer teaching placements, like I had done the resume stuff to make me a standout candidate for one of these positions, right? And then I applied to 3 teachers' college, as was the style at the time. And 2 of them rejected me, kids. And I got those rejection letters and I thought, whoa, Jack, this ain't going to happen for me. Like, despite getting good marks, despite the volunteer work that I've done, despite the effort I've put into over the past 4 years, getting one of these teachers' college spots, it's not going to work out for me. And I started to panic a little bit. Because what do? Go work at Mill for 9 pence, right? And I was still awaiting the response from the 3rd school that I applied to, which was the one that I felt I had the least chance of getting into, all right? It was going to be the highest marks required, just the most competitive. It was Western University. And I thought I got no chance of getting into Western. Despite everything I've tried to do, I didn't get into these other two. There's no way I'm getting into Western, and this dream is freaking over. And then one day, one fateful day, an envelope arrived in the mail, had the Western University logo on it. And I opened up expecting to see the usual form rejection. We'll put you on a waiting list. And instead, there was an acceptance letter inside. The miracle came, kids, and that might seem mundane to you, but I want you to consider my life right now. Western University is in L-Town. I now live in L-Town as a result of that. I did not go into teaching, all right? That did not turn out to be my path. But I spent a year here, and then when that year was over, I went off and got married. I lived in Kingston for a year. Wife was going to teacher's college. She ran screaming from it too. Then we went and lived in Japan. Then we tried our hardest to live in Guelph. Those of you who are not Ontario people, these place names won't matter or won't mean anything to you, but that doesn't matter. Tried to live here, tried to live there, didn't work out. Became desperate. And so I said, well, we need to go to a city where there's opportunity, where there's people. Don't want to go to Toronto. L-Town is about the best choice we've got in this province, and I have some history there, so let's just do that. So we packed up with almost nothing in the bank, and we came to L-Town, and we got an apartment, and for a long period of time, we were broke. We would spend Friday night at the Jumbo Video. All right, some of you are smiling right now. Some of you are like, what's Jumbo? What's video? We'd go to the Jumbo Video on a Friday night in 1999, and we wouldn't rent a movie, kids. We would look at the movies. And the reason we went to Jumbo is because they had free popcorn. So we would get the popcorn, and we would walk around Jumbo Video, and we would look at the movies. Because we didn't have $6 to rent one of them. We'd look at them, and then we'd walk home. All right? It was not easy in the beginning, but eventually we found our way. And now you fast forward, whatever it is, 20 years later, more than 20 years later, and we have our home here. We have our friends here. I have my whole music career I owe to being in this town and in this scene, which means this podcast is owed to that. My whole life is owed to being in L-Town. And the reason that I'm in L-Town ultimately is that I got that miracle acceptance letter from Western University. And so what I'm saying to you is the miracles do happen, man. And I know if you're out there right now, jobs are exactly the same. I've been in, there was one in particular job that I just couldn't bear. It was undignified. It ran against everything in my freaking body. And then at a certain point, there was like an employee review came up and there was a reshuffling in the company. I got, I think, utterly, royally freaking screwed in that process. And it was too much to freaking bear. And at the same time, I had applied to some other positions, right? And on the day that I got freaking screwed by the company I was working for, I received a job offer from the local public school board where I went and I worked, and I owe much of my career to that as well. The miracle came at the darkest freaking hour, man. I got screwed by my company, and the same day I got to quit. Ho ho! How freaking heavy and how freaking happy is that, man? And so I say to you, if you are a person who has been working diligently towards something and it has not come to you, do not quit before the miracle can happen, right? You have to trust the timing in some cases, and I know that's freaking hard. But if you're really in it, all right, if this is genuinely a passion for you, if this is something you are genuinely pursuing, something you don't want to give up on, but you feel tempted to, consider Wrexham AFC. Consider, out of nowhere, a miracle of miracles happening. And then watching the whole situation do a complete 180. And the trajectory utterly changed in a freaking instant, because it's possible to happen. Happens in sports all the time. Happens in people's lives all the freaking time. How many times have you seen that kind of not very lucky in love person, that friend of yours, who finally breaks up with the latest dud and is like, I'm freaking done. I am done with relationships. I'm not doing this anymore. And then 2 weeks later, a bolt of lightning, and they meet a forever person. I mean, this happens all the time. You know, sometimes people just quit too early on the freaking miracle. And I believe if your heart is in a thing, if you're really in it to win it, you know, if you're really holding on, I believe the miracle can come. I really do. And so if today you're tempted to quit it all, consider the possibility that the miracle can come, man. I have to consider that all the time as a creative, as a writer, as a podcaster. And there are times when it's right to let it go. There are times when it's right to quit, you know, and that's utterly okay. I wrote a blog post some years ago that said quit something, because there are times when we hold on to things that we know we shouldn't be holding on to. There are times we hold on to things because our ego wants them, or we think that's what we're supposed to want, but we know deep down inside that what we're investing in this is wrongly invested. You know, you have to be discerning about those things. But if you're in it to win it, and you know this is what you were born to, and it's not working for you, and it seems like a struggle all the time, I just encourage you to think of Ryan Reynolds and Rob McElhenney and just hold out for the miracle, okay? Just hold on a little bit longer, because the miracle can happen, and the evidence is everywhere if you look for it, okay? That's all I have to say about that. I got one or two other things just to tip you off to. Before I do that, I'm going to do the Patreon plug. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, kids of all ages. There is a Patreon page for this podcast. It is patreon.com/John Huff Podcast. Why does it exist? Why does it exist? Because this is a creative project of mine that I hope to monetize. All right, I don't think there's anything wrong with that. It costs me money to make this freaking show. It costs me a lot of time, a lot of energy to make this show. And so I set up a Patreon for those of you who feel an impulse to just support in that way. I do not want to run ads on this podcast. YouTube is almost unwatchable now. Like the number of ads that run on YouTube is even beyond AM radio. It's freaking maddening. You're listening to a song, a minute and a half in, you're getting ready to jump into the chorus, and then an ad comes on for some BS you don't want to see, right? And I know, if I don't want to see that, I can pay for the service. I understand what comes with being a cheapskate about it. But the point remains, the first thing they do when you subscribe is they kill the ads so you don't have to see them anymore. They know as well as I do, ads are freaking annoying, and I do not want to litter my podcast with ads, because I've listened to podcasts that do that, and I got to shut them off, all right? They just drive me freaking crazy. Don't want to do that, set up the Patreon, okay? It's $5 a month, one tier of membership. It's you saying to me, I appreciate the work that you're doing. I appreciate this podcast. I appreciate the money that you yourself are putting into it. I want to show my support in that way. If you are being educated, inspired, motivated, if you're getting new music, if you just like hearing a friendly voice in your ear holes, please consider supporting me on Patreon, okay? Patreon.com/John Huff Podcast. Don't want to do that? That's fine. Don't worry about it. No biggie. Share the episodes, please. Word of mouth is the best advertising. I've tried the other kinds. They don't amount to squat. Telling your friends who like podcasts that they might like this one actually provides a real tangible result. Please share the episodes. Please tell your friends. If you're interested in merch, I got t-shirts, I got mugs, john-huff.com/shop. I do appreciate your support these many years. Thank you ever so kindly. All of you who have supported in any way, even if it's just to write me a little note that said, hey, I like that episode. I do appreciate it. I know that I ask a lot of you to spend your time and attention here. I understand that, and I appreciate you doing so. I'm going to stop plugging now, for me at least, but I'm going to plug two other things, all right? The Soul-Inspired podcast with Joe Borowski. Joe Borowski is a great cat, fabulous guitar player, fabulous singer-songwriter. Started a podcast to have conversations with people about important life stuff and esoteric stuff, and he called that the Soul-Inspired Podcast. And I'm delighted to tell you that I am his guest this week on the Soul-Inspired Podcast. And so we talked about my story, some of the things I've talked to on my podcast about my history in music, my history with writing, some of what I've learned through that. We talked at great length about my episodes with anxiety and how that has led me to a different kind of spirituality. So if you're struggling with anxiety or depression or any of that stuff, you might want to check out my chat with Joe. Had a really, really good time talking to him. It is my honor to be on other people's podcasts. I do not take that lightly. Even though I'm uncomfortable sometimes talking about my own kind of personal stuff, I hope that it provides some help and solace to people out there. So this current episode of the Soul-Inspired Podcast with Joe Borowski, it's with me, kids, if you can stand my voice. You can even watch it on YouTube if you want to look at my head for a while. But he talks to people about near-death experiences, about esoteric stuff, Bigfoot, some really, really interesting stuff on that show, all related to spirituality in some way. And really, really, really interesting episodes. So check out that with Joe Borowski. Also want to plug the new stand-up special by Mike Birbiglia. I call it a stand-up special, and technically it is, but Birbiglia is one of these guys who does more of a one-person show. So this one's called The Old Man in the Pool, and it is about his experience of reflections upon mortality, okay? So it'll be, an hour stand-up special, but it's all thematically linked to mortality and getting older and health and aging and all that stuff. Mike Birbiglia works really clean. All right, he's not one of those guys. And he works really innocently in a way. He's got a very gentle delivery. My spouse or significant other cannot stand the angry comics. I love them. Give me a good, solid Lewis Black rant. Love that. Love the release of it. And I just like feeling that kind of emotion. It's fun. And people are really, really freaking funny when they do that. Mike Birbiglia is not that. All right. He's really clever. He's insightful. He's got an innocence about him, a gentleness about him. And this special's really profound. It's one of the things that you get in a one-person show is that, yeah, you've got your punchlines and yeah, you've got your jokes and fundamentally it's funny, but you can also build in these really profound moments and these moving moments and these moments that kind of stop you. And this is just a really, really well done special. It's very funny. It's also very insightful, very profound. And he's got some props and he's got some screen stuff going. So if you're looking for something this evening after work, and you want to laugh a little bit, and you don't want to be overwhelmed by somebody's energy, I guess, Mike Birbiglia, The Old Man in the Pool. I watched it on Netflix. Very, very funny. He's a good comedian. I like him a lot. There you go, man. You want to be inspired? Check out the Soul Inspired Podcast. You want to laugh a little bit? You want to just think? Have your cockles warmed just a little bit? Mike Birbiglia, The Old Man in the Pool. And hold out, kids. You may have recognized my I'm summing this up tone just come into my voice. Hold out for the miracle, okay? I know it's difficult. I know it's freaking hard to find a breakthrough, but they do happen. And it helps, I think, if you go and look for them. It's very, very, very easy to find people who will tell you it cannot work out. It's very, very, very easy to go and find the evidence that it won't work out. Harder, more rewarding is to find the evidence that it will and that it can. The miracles do happen, man. Something my therapist said to me that I have said to you more than once on this show. In any given situation, in any given pursuit, better to ask, how can this work out? Than to automatically come up with all the reasons why it can't. Why can this work out? Because at any given moment, your own Deadpool might rock up and have everything you're freaking looking for. Thanks for hanging with me this far. Thank you ever so much, as always, for supporting this podcast. Remember that good things happen when you put yourself out there, kids. And hey, I'll check you later. Yeah. Less than a mile from the center of town, famous old stadium crumbling down. No one's invested so much as a penny. Bring on the Deadpool and Rob McElhenney.